Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this evening. So great to see everyone. I see it's 4:59, so we will get started momentarily. Just setting up some logistics. So you see that the meeting is now being recorded and we are live on YouTube. And you'll see that interpretation is set up. We'll momentarily be walking through the logistics. All right, well, it's officially 5 o'clock. Want to make sure that we go ahead and get started as we have a lot to cover this evening. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our 32nd Arvin Lamont CSC or Community Steering Committee meeting. My name is Amy Vamos, and tonight I'm joined by my colleague Jen Marcigan, who you see on screen today. Some of you might recognize, she's a part of our facilitation team, and you may have seen her facilitate the Shafter and Fresno CSC meetings. Welcome, Jen. Thanks for being here today. Jen will be my partner tonight as Liz is out on vacation, who you are used to seeing at our meetings. Today, Jen will be helping with note-taking and supporting facilitation and capturing action items for us tonight. Before we open it up to welcome and introduction, let's just take a few minutes to make sure that our interpretation is working. We know that we have a few newer folks today who might be less familiar with the process. So we'd like to go through our logistics and housekeeping slides to ensure that everyone has access to our meeting. So at this time, I'm going to pass it to my colleagues at Lingüística. Tania, would you like to go ahead and provide instructions for interpretation?
Yes, of course. Thank you, Amy. Buenas tardes a todos. Bienvenidos a su reunión. Vamos a darles instrucciones de cómo pueden accesar a la interpretación en español. Si ustedes ingresaron con una computadora, van a ver en la parte de abajo del menú de Zoom un mundo o un icono de un globo. Por favor, selecciónenlo y seleccionen el canal de español. También pueden silenciar el audio original para que solo escuchen una voz a la vez. Si ingresaron con un teléfono móvil o con una tableta, sus opciones son un poco diferentes. Van a tocar su pantalla, van a buscar los 3 puntitos que les va a dar un menú. Seleccionen donde diga interpretación de idioma. Después seleccionen español. Nuevamente, silenciar el audio original. Y por último, es muy importante que seleccionen el botón azul, usualmente que dice listo, done, finalizado, terminado, dependiendo cómo están sus opciones. Y así nos van a poder escuchar en español. Ahora voy a dar mis instrucciones en inglés. Welcome everyone. This is just a reminder on how to access the interpretation for you. If you're a monolingual English speaker, we do ask you to please select the English channel. That way you can hear the communication from Spanish into English. If you're joining us with a computer, you'll see at the bottom of your screen a word-like icon. You need to click on the icon and select the English channel. If you're joining with a cell phone or a tablet, you need to tap your screen, find the 3 dots, select language interpretation, select English, and then select done. That way you can have the interpretation available for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tania. To go ahead and stop sharing my screen for 1 second to make sure that interpretation is working. All right, not seeing that anyone has any problems with interpretation, so we're going to go ahead and continue tonight's conversation. All right, a couple other logistics that I want to cover before we get started. Please do mute yourself and make sure that your full name and organization are showing as your screen name. You all are used to seeing some of this content before, and as you know, our team is here to support in renaming. So you might see your name on your screen change. We're asking that CSC members should use the following naming conventions, where you have CSC, followed by your first name and last name, and R to indicate if you're a resident. And all other participants who are joining us here tonight for the first time, we do ask that you please update with your affiliation. So AD for the Air District, or CARB for California Air Resources Board, and P for general public. And all or the other organizations, you can write your org name or your organization name. If you have any questions, you will feel free to reach out to me on the chat, or to Jem or somebody from the Air District, and we will definitely help you with the renaming. As you know, we do ask that you stay on mute unless you are speaking or planning to speak. Sometimes we understand that we can often accidentally unmute, so you might see someone from our team mute you if we hear some distraction on your end. We do also ask that throughout the night, you do raise your Zoom hand if you have any questions. And of course, you can always unmute and ask your question, or physically raise your hand and we can see you. Those of you who are residents that participate in the residential stipend program, we do ask that you stay on for at least 75% of the meeting to be eligible for a stipend. So that's about 90 minutes of our 2-hour meeting. Before we jump into the agenda for tonight, just want to remind you that as your facilitators, part of our role in these meetings is to work behind the scenes, to take attendance, to offer technical assistance, and provide some general support to ensure that everyone can fully engage in tonight's meeting. So if at any point you're having trouble with Zoom or translations, or have any questions on anything else, please do feel free to reach out to any of us and we can help you. As your facilitators, one of our main goals is to ensure that we can engage in a productive discussion and a respectful dialogue with the intention of supporting a fair and just implementation of AB 617 within the Arvin Lamont community. At every meeting, we read these norms that you see on the screen aloud to continuously remind us of our agreements, and we do our best to reinforce these norms so that they become second nature to all of us. So for today, I'll read the first agreement, which is everyone has agreed to help achieve meeting goals by focusing on solutions, opportunities, and having a productive dialogue. You can see the rest of the group agreements on the screen. I won't go through them because we've gone through them many times, but you will see that we will potentially be calling folks in if a norm has been violated. If we miss anything, please feel free to jump in or to send us a direct message on chat. We are here for you, and we want to make sure that we're working collaboratively without causing any harm along the way. This is your meeting, and we are here to ensure that everyone can have a productive dialogue. With that said, at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Cesar and Bianca to see if they have any opening remarks. Am I not seeing Cesar? I'm quickly scanning my screen here. I don't see Cesar or Bianca. So at this time, I'm going to pass it to Ryan, the Air District, see if we have any opening remarks from the Air District.
Hi, Amy. Good evening, everyone. Great to be here. Ryan Hayashi, Deputy Air Pollution Control Officer. Yeah, just thanks to everyone again for being here. I would thank Bianca and Cesar for meeting with us prior to tonight's meeting and reviewing the materials that we're going to be covering tonight as part of the meeting. They always provide really great insight and input into how to make these presentations better, and so we appreciate them for that. Exciting news. We have the opportunity to move forward on some measures in the community emission reductions program. So we're definitely looking for input from the community steering committee, recommendations for certain things, but also, kind of starting it off as usual, like to highlight some of the positive things that have happened since we last met over a month ago, and how we're continuing to move all of these things forward. So excited and happy to be here. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ryan. And should Cesar or Bianca show up later, we'll make space for them to add any context. So as you can see here on the screen, here's an overview of the agenda that you all should have received in your email. We are right now going to review the action item tracker, followed by an update of the SERP implementation, progress. During this item, we will be looking potentially for some consensus. Then we will provide you all with an enforcement overview. And then finally, we'll provide some standing updates for you all to be informed of the things that are happening within your community. And lastly, we'll wrap up with some closing remarks and upcoming agenda topics for our next meeting. As you know, we have an official time at 6:55 for public comment, but one of the new practices that we've been implementing over the last several meetings is ensuring that at the end of each agenda item, we do allow for the public to provide any insights or any comments that they have after the CSC has had a discussion. So if you're here representing the public today, please know that we'll invite you to comment along the way. And we also have space dedicated at the end of the meeting if the public has comments outside of our agenda items for tonight. So with that said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass it to Eric from the Air District to walk us through some of the most recent action items. As Eric is getting ready to review those, just like to remind everyone that's here today that in order for us to help facilitate transparency and accountability, our team in the Air District works continuously and systematically on updating these action items on the tracker that's available to you all so that you can see the documentation on progress towards implementing these action items. Eric, please feel free to take over.
Hi, good evening, folks. I'll go ahead and go over our action items. Go ahead and share my screen. And folks see my screen? Perfect. Alrighty, I'll go ahead and begin with our in progress items. Alrighty, these are action items from our previous meeting, and they have been mailed to the folks that have requested mailed copies. So if you had any questions or concerns or would like to have items mailed to you, please feel free to let us know. So I'll go ahead and begin. All right, our first item was to brainstorm for Fuller Acres folks and to partner up with local community organizations. So we will coordinate with those organizations that have stepped up when we get closer to the lawn and garden events. Next item. So at this CSC meeting, we will actually review updates on road paving projects in the community, especially go over some items in the Fuller Acres community. Okay. Go ahead and scroll back to the top. I'll move through our completed section. Our first item was for residents to organize themselves to comment on the Ag Commissioner during our pesticide subcommittee meeting to the Board of Supervisors. So the CSC and the community members brought their concerns regarding the Ag Commissioner to the Board of Supervisors. Okay. Our next action item was for the Air District, DPR, and CARB to share their respective agency management teams how the CSC is experiencing the Ag Commissioner. Right, so the district followed up with communicating the importance of being respectful, mindful to everyone's lived experiences to the Ag Commissioner.
All right, there's more.
Alrighty. We do not have any ongoing items, so I'll go and jump into our comments. Oh wait, I think there's actually some more completed items. Pardon me. Alrighty, yes. All right, so our next completed item was to contact Jennifer Wood from the Lamont School District to discuss opportunities. We have reached out to Jennifer and we will continue to coordinate for that. So thank you for that great lead. Our next item is the Air District will follow up with the county, well, Yolanda being with the Kern County to discuss the status of roads in Arvin and Lamont, and we'll report back at the next CSC meeting. So during this CSC meeting, the Air District will go over some of those concerns, and Yolanda is not able to make it during this meeting. However, she did share this awesome flyer that I'll share in a link for Kern County. So if you folks have seen any like potholes, illegal dumping, or any violations, feel free to contact this number for Kern County Public Works to help resolve that. And this is in Spanish as well. We'll go ahead and drop this link after the action items. So thank you, Yolanda, for this. All right. And an older action item that got completed was the Air District will include visual representation of enforcement processes and timelines for violations. So we will be discussing this today. Okay. All right. Jumping now to our comment noted. Ready? Oh, there you go. All right. The Air District will continue to explore opportunities for outreach and education to the community. Also including billboards, and share updates and next steps with the CSC. The district will update the CSC if new methods of outreach will be utilized. The CSC is always welcome to suggest new forms of outreach for Arvin and Lamont. Alrighty, I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen. That was our last action item. I see a hand. Go ahead, Mario.
Mario, go ahead.
I think you're on mute, Mario.
I think he was clapping before, so maybe he changed it. I saw a clap and a hand, but Mario, if it's a real hand, we'll come back to you. He was so excited he had to clap and raise his hand. Let's take a moment to pause to see if there's any other questions or comments or clarification. I am not seeing anyone raise their hand or any comments in the chat. Thank you, Eric. I think with that, if things come up later and you have questions, please do feel free to put it in the chat or to raise your hand and we'll call on you at that point. So with that, we are done with that agenda item. We are now going to go ahead and move to our next item. So for the next agenda item, we would like to ensure that everyone is aware of the exciting community engagement for implementation of several CERT measures, including heavy-duty truck replacement and the road paving projects. As a reminder, the goal of the heavy-duty truck replacement measure is to reduce emissions from heavy-duty diesel trucks operating in the Arvin Lamont community. Today, we have the opportunity to hear and learn about a presentation and exciting things that are happening, especially in regards to the proposed plan, and most importantly, to make space to have your questions answered. So to do this, we're going to start with a presentation and then open it up to questions. If possible, we might reach consensus on some next steps. If we decide that we need more time or we need more clarification than the time that we've allowed for tonight, then we can do that as well. So in a moment, I'm going to pass it to Ryan and Janine, but I do see that Mario is back. So before I do that, Janine and Ryan, if you can hold tight. Mario, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just got out of the video. I was gonna say, I always ask about that that billboard. What did they find out after all? Are they get it or not? Because my understanding is that they just want to put things on the gas stations and stuff. That's all they want to do.
Right, the advertisement that was mentioned. Well, I see Heather is here from the outreach team at the Air District, Mario. So let me go ahead and make some space for Heather and other folks to provide you and the rest of the CSC with an update.
Yeah, because I would like to know if it happened or not, like that could
Perfect.
start doing some other things.
Yeah, so let's get some clear update and then we can potentially write some action items.
Yeah, because I want to make sure that we get it or not.
Okay, well, let's hear. Thank you,
Hi,
Mario.
Mario. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for your eagerness. I really do like it. I can give you an update. I can warn you that it's going to take patience for the billboard concept. I think as we sort of outlined last time, we're investigating it, But the bigger issue, of course, is going to be finding, property that we can erect it on. I think we might have better luck partnering with other agencies, but we're investigating all the options. I don't have a immediate update for you today. We were going to give some standing updates later in the meeting that sort of show you the progress we're making. There's, as you noted, there are signs, not on gas stations. Technically, they're like markets and things. Hopefully you saw those pop up. And more things like that. We're also potentially going to secure or working to secure maybe long-term billboards in the area, right? In lieu of getting a digital sign, which is gonna take some work to pull all those pieces together. We will have a presence in your community, Mario, I guarantee it.
Yeah, because there's property, empty lots in the main street. I mean, there's a lot of property.
Right. So, and at the end of the day, things we all have to consider are the priorities of this committee, the funding we have committed, and the other things we can achieve, certainly, in what we can spend or what we will spend to put out the work. The other thing we're working on, and I'm kind of jumping ahead, sorry, Dr. Ramos, the school outreach. So next week, as a matter of fact, I'm jumping ahead from Anna's update, but we'll be in town next week, the 29th and 30th, at the schools, after school, during the morning, pick up, drop off, handing out information to parents. We did the same thing today and yesterday in the Shafter community. And we must have not talked to like full conversations, but we interacted with probably 1,000 people over the last couple of days. And it was huge and wonderful conversations, and just the exact things that you talk about, Mario, that the people know we exist. They know there's air quality information to protect them. And then one further, they know there's funding and tools that they can use. So it really takes a multifaceted approach. The sign could possibly be a piece of it. But I assure you, we're doing all the pieces as we move forward.
Just imagine you got 1,000 people. Imagine how many people will see that sign.
Right.
Right. And
so
people got more information.
Yes, and I'll get you a static billboard soon.
And that's my point. What I want to do, to give information to the people.
Got it. Appreciate you, Mario.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Mario. Thank you, Mario. And thank you, Heather, for the teaser on the update. So I will remind you, Heather, maybe to give a little bit more of that context later. And Anna, when we get to that, appreciate you giving us a sneak peek of some of those things.
Too.
Oh, awesome. Perfect. And we'll be sure to make time for that. So without further ado, want to make sure we have plenty of space. So we've allocated about 40 minutes or so, but we do understand and anticipate several questions. So Janine and Ryan, take it away.
Thanks, Amy. I'm back again. Wanted to share a few slides with you. Like I said, covering a few things. So let me go ahead and share my screen now. Okay, hopefully everybody can see my screen. And hopefully it's big enough that people can see. If there are any issues, please let me know. So covering a few things, I'm going to cover the discussion about recent community emissions reduction program milestones, have a brief update on road paving, and then I'm going to transition it over to Janine Tackett with our grants program, who is a much better speaker than I am and much more knowledgeable in the area of heavy duty truck measure that's in the SERP, and just kind of some of the feedback that we've gotten in trying to make this a successful program. It was something that was placed at the, given one of the highest priorities for the community to start seeing people transitioning away from diesel trucks to zero emission trucks. And so, we have some information for you about that. I'm looking to get the feedback and potential consensus on that. So a couple exciting things. So we've talked about it in the past. There's a measure in your community emissions reduction program for passenger vehicle repair and replace project. And in order for us to be able to start spending that money, we have to submit what's called the community identified project plan to the California Air Resources Board to review and approve. And as soon as they approve it, the next step is we have to take it to our board to make changes to the program to allow us to do that. And so currently in the process, we've been having back and forth discussions with the California Air Resources Board to get that approval from them to open up this program. And it's an exciting opportunity. It's going to give a significant sum of money for the purchase of new or used vehicles to transition to near zero vehicles. And so we're really excited about the opportunity. In addition to that, it also will provide funding for holding right in the Arvin Lamont community what we call tune-in, tune-up events, where people will be able to bring their vehicles and get them tested to see if they're meeting. And if they don't meet the smog requirements, that they'll be able to get a voucher to get repairs performed on their vehicles. So it's a great program for the community, and we're looking forward to bringing that hopefully very soon. In addition to that, one of the other measures that's in the community emission reduction program was to provide funding for public fleet vehicles. These are the vehicles that are in the community all the time. They're city, they're county vehicles. They're other local organization vehicles that travel within the boundaries the majority of the time, and there's funding for that. And so there was a small change that we needed to make to the program to ensure that it's going to be able to be successfully launched. It had to do with the agencies were limited to how much they could apply for within a year period. And so what we did was to try to have the transition faster. We removed that cap on that, but everything else with it is still the same. So sidewalks and road paving, last meeting, it got brought up that the community would like an update on where we're at with that. And so kind of going all the way back to March, which seems like it was just yesterday, but now it's 5 months ago. But we were very fortunate to have Yolanda and the county come and present on the different projects, and the community steering committee, all of you provided feedback and kind of prioritize the different projects that the county was looking at. And so we are moving forward with those, and we're getting under contract to start that work. And but just as with anything that involves large scale construction, those types of things do take some time. So we're not saying once we get into the contract it's going to start a week or 2 weeks after that. There's oftentimes the county has to plan these things out over an extended period of time. So but the contracting is the important part, getting that and kind of dedicating that funding to those projects, so then it gets in the queue to do that work. And so we're excited that will be moving forward. The other one is the city of Arvin, and I believe Christine's here, and we're looking forward to bringing her back and sharing out potential paving projects within the Arvin city limits. And I know there's quite a few that the steering committee members have prioritized and have provided that feedback, and so looking forward to bringing that back and having a discussion about that in the near future. So before maybe we transition to the heavy duty trucks, is there any questions about sidewalks, road paving, or anything else that I've shared tonight?
Not seeing any, Ryan.
Okay, great. I will transition it to, I will stop sharing, and I will turn it over to Janine, unless she needs me to.
I think we might have one hand up.
Yeah, I spoke too
Okay.
soon. Bianca, go ahead. And welcome, Bianca.
Sorry, I was trying to get my hand up, but my question is for the pavement project. Is there any time frame that you're looking at? I missed that in the presentation. I don't know if I
Yeah,
There-
they don't have the exact timeframes. There is a queue of projects that the county has, and so I believe that they're kind of squeezing some of this work in to some of the projects that they're already looking at, understanding the importance of this. But they didn't give us like a firm, this will be the date that this happens.
Do they need community, sorry, do they need community support in maybe uplifting the pavement program or any of the programs that you were mentioning?
I don't know. I think the community support was vital to this to getting this done. Otherwise, I don't think these projects would have made it onto the list for future projects. So I mean the having this steering committee weigh in and provide feedback, that I think weighed heavily in the decision of the county to agree to enter into contracts and to do this work. And so it was definitely a very important component. And yeah, we could definitely bring back more information about what that timeline may look like. Mr. Aguirre.
Thank you. I think same line as Bianca. So as of now, they already approved sidewalks in Lamont. So now for now the ball is on the county, right? They are working on developing the plan, how they are going to build and everything, or.
So yeah, the first step is we're coordinating with them. We're getting them to sign the contracts. That's the official thing that has to be done, where we commit the funding, they accept the funding, and then that's kind of how they plan that out. So that's kind of the stage that we're in right now.
Yeah, because we are meeting with Public Works next week, so just to be clear, we need to be a little bit hard on them or very friendly.
That's a good question. I'm sure they'll probably give you an update if you ask.
Yeah, no, we'll ask them, if where they are right now. I know they have a lot of projects. The good news.
Yeah, when you're dealing with a county the size of Kern, there's a lot of different projects, and there's a lot of planning that has to go into completing every single project that happens. And my understanding is though that they definitely these projects, they understand how important they are and how needed they are.
Thank you.
But I will never say don't continue to share that.
Thank you. And Diana, I saw your hand was raised. Not sure if you still had a question or if it was answered.
Sí, era prácticamente, bueno, buenas tardes a todos. Lo que Gustavo Aguirre había dicho sobre que nos íbamos a juntar con Obras Públicas la próxima semana a unos residentes de aquí de Lamont, y era para saber, y entre nuestra lista está preguntar sobre el proyecto de las banquetas que ya fueron aprobadas con la AB 617. Eso era más o menos lo que iba a comentar también.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, I think now we can go to Janine.
All right. Very good. Ryan, were you gonna share the slide deck or did you want me to?
I could do it either way. If you want to say next slide.
I've got it up, so let me just go ahead and share screen. I think we should be good. Everybody can see that, hopefully. Okay, great. My name is Janine Tackett, supervisor in the grants department, and I oversee our truck programs. I'm very thankful to be here with everybody tonight to talk about trucks. It's a very exciting time right now. We've got more availability of electric zero emission heavy duty trucks. So we've been in a period of time where we were waiting for manufacturers to roll trucks out, and now they're starting to come out. They're available. It is still a bit limited, but there is definitely an increased availability. We do have this measure within your SERP to replace heavy duty trucks with zero emission trucks. And those are for businesses located within the community boundaries. We have an allocation in that SERP of $5 million, and that program for replacement has been open. However, we have not received any interest. So this is definitely an area where we're investigating. We've been investigating. Why is there not participation? What can be done? We have definitely had several conversations with fleet owners. We've participated in many ride and drive events throughout the valley, including in Kern County, and had the opportunity to speak to a lot of fleets. Some of the challenges that we have heard about and have seen for local businesses and single owner operators is the concern of the unknown. The technology is new. They're not familiar with it. They don't know what to expect. And in many of these smaller companies and single owner operators, they don't have a lot of extra trucks in case something happens. So if the electric truck comes and there's problems or they run into any issues, if they have to give up their old diesel truck, they will be without work. And that is very concerning to them. And that's very concerning to us as well. We don't want to see any of these businesses fail because, you know, they're trying to do the right thing and advance the technology. So as I mentioned, we've done conducted a bunch of outreach across the valley. We've also connected with other regions throughout the state. In fact, we were just on a call with San Diego today, one of many conversations we've had with them. They have actually done a similar project plan for their AB 617 community. And we had some conversations with them, and what we've heard throughout the state is a lot of the same type of hesitation from fleet owners. They're very worried and concerned about handing over and crushing their diesel truck without knowing for sure that that new electric truck is going to work for them. So we've been looking at different options. We've been investigating how we can help ease some of that concern and still get fleets within your community to transition to zero emission. So we have a proposed project plan that is modeled after the one that San Diego has already implemented. This would allow fleet owners within the Valley's Arvin Lamont community to expand their fleets by purchasing a new zero emission truck without the need to crush their old truck immediately. So this would be for fleets that are in compliance already with the state. Their trucks are legal and compliant to operate, but we would be assisting them in bringing into their fleet a new zero emission truck. We would provide enhanced funding amounts to help take off some of the financial burden, because these trucks are considerably more expensive than a standard diesel or even a alternative fuel like a compressed natural gas. The project plan would propose that there is a required number of trips that must be made, and that the fleet needs to identify a diesel truck that's already doing those trips within the community. So we like to look at this as a displacement of that diesel truck rather than a replacement. So we would be asking for the fleet to identify the truck that is operating in the community and then replace those miles, those trips in the community with the electric truck. There are some pros and cons, and we definitely have looked at this from multiple angles. Some of the pros to doing this option would be its additional pathway for increased program participation in a kind of a shortened time frame. So we're really looking to get people on board quickly, as the time frames are quite lengthy to place an order for electric truck, to get their infrastructure in place so that they can charge their truck, and then to have the truck ready and available to operate in their business. So that definitely does take time, probably at least a year or more. And considering timeframes for expending money and getting cleanup of the diesel emissions in the area, we want to try to get people on board as quickly as possible so that we can work through all of those aspects of transitioning to a zero emission truck. Some of the cons is that, the big one is that this is not a replacement. We would not be scrapping that compliant diesel truck. But the traditional pathway for replacement program would remain open. So if somebody did have an older truck that they were ready to crush, or if the community decides to adopt this plan and a fleet takes on a new zero emission truck and they try it out and they're loving it and they want to do more, then we can always put them through the traditional replacement pathway once their concerns about the technology have been eased. So today we were hoping to discuss this option, answer any questions that people might have, and maybe come to some agreement on next steps, or even possibly, if everybody just loves the idea, adoption of the idea to move on to get the plan written and over to CARB for approval. As Ryan had mentioned on some of the other SERP updates, this would require us to write that plan, send it to the California Air Resources Board for them to review and comment on, and then ultimately approve before we could implement it within the community. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing because I'm sure that there are going to be some questions, and hopefully I can help answer all of those for you folks. Yes, Gustavo.
Yeah, I think I have several questions. One is, how many trucks can we buy with the 5 million?
So that would really vary depending on the size of the truck. We've got the program currently considers heavy duty trucks anything from a class 4 up to a class 8. So a class 4 is going to be a small delivery style truck, similar to like what FedEx or UPS drives around. And then a class all the way up to a class 8, which would be your classic big rig. That's going to be like a tractor trailer or have a fixed body on it for larger delivery type purposes. If we were to look at worst case scenario, the largest trucks, you would probably be getting not very many because they're expensive. So if we did all class 8 trucks, you'd be looking at approximately 10 trucks in the community. So that could be spread over 10 fleets or 2 fleets or whichever way. Really, we're looking at how do we get the first ones into the community? Because one of the things that we heard from fleets is that they're just not sure the truck will work for them. And when we attended the ride and drive events where the manufacturers brought the trucks to locations, usually it was at a dealership or a convention center type setting, and the fleets were actually able to get in and see them and touch them, they're like, oh, wait, this is kind of interesting. I'm curious now. I want to ask more questions. I want to get more info. So we're hoping if we can get a few fleets within the community to adopt the trucks and bring them in, that the other businesses around there can use them as a source of information. They can come, they can visit, they can talk to them about how they're working and help to promote the adoption further on.
So, and so how to manage, for Arvin Lamont 617, I think the idea is to reduce pollution in this boundary, how to manage, the expectation that the air is going to be a little bit cleaner because of those trucks. How many miles they are going to be traveling in our community, and as you mentioned, that a diesel truck is currently driving, throughout these communities. What may be the percentage of mileage driving in the communities, and if it's because what I'm thinking, if it's a bigger fleet, bigger company, they tend to travel, interstate, and how many times we are going to see them here. And I'm just remembering, in this chapter 617, we had money to buy a locomotive, train locomotive, and we were not able to identify that local locomotive.
Yeah.
And I think that would be my concern, how can we ensure that, this funding for the 617 are going to benefit the boundaries of Arvin Lamont?
Yeah. So one of the things that we do have to consider right now is that the zero emission heavy duty trucks do not have a very long range. So trucks that are traveling across the state or through multiple states, the trucks can't go that far. They really have a range of about 200 to 300 miles round trip before they need to charge again. And depending on their load, less. So really the technology is best suited for local delivery. And that's really where we would be targeting this. So this would be businesses that are domiciled within the community and are operating their trucks coming and going from their location throughout the day. San Diego's project plan requires a minimum of 52 trips per year in the community. Now, we would be proposing to follow that guidance with the number of trips rather than the number of miles, only because the smaller category trucks and trucks that are driving around the community all day long are really not accumulating a lot of miles, but their time spent is all right in the community. As opposed to, like you mentioned, the longer haul drivers that might be domiciled living in the Arvin Lamont community, but drive straight out, and then a majority of their miles are done elsewhere in the state. So we really would be focusing this effort for these new purchases on trucks that are truly operating a majority of their time within the community, doing local delivery type vocation.
Yeah, I've been talking to some of, either drivers or family members of, drivers. I think their concerns are similar, it's if I'm driving, outside of the county, and am I going to be able to come back? And the other comment is, if I had to modify the truck that I have right now to be in compliance with current regulations, what incentive do I have to now, switch it to something else that I don't know?
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we've heard consistently. Most fleets, especially smaller businesses, they don't have a lot of extra money, especially right now, to invest in technology that they're unsure how it's going to work. But we need to get the trucks out there to help promote that technology and to get people comfortable with it. So really, we're looking for a handful of companies, businesses that are feeling adventurous, that want to be progressive, that really want to do some benefit to the community, to take on that risk. And we're going to, with this proposed plan, we would help to offset that financial portion considerably, up to 90% of the cost of the truck, in order for them to take that risk and put that truck in their fleet and operate it within the community. So this isn't a plan that we would anticipate would continue on long term. It's really a short-term solution to get the ball rolling. And then once the technology is developed out a little bit more, it's become more familiar to folks, we really would see our transition back to a standard replacement program for long-term funding goals. But in the immediate, if we want to see trucks, electric trucks in the community, what we've heard from the fleets is that they need something more. They need more incentive money. They need less risk. They need to be able to hold on to that old truck in the event. And I'd like to, and I don't know how many of you have heard or not, but Nikolai is one of the big electric truck manufacturers that has recently made their trucks available to the public for sale. Very popular brand. Many trucks had been deployed and they ran into some problems with the trucks and recalled them all. So imagine if you're a small business in a small community and your truck is recalled, but you've already crushed your old one. You're out of business. Like you would have to go rent a truck at 3 or 4 times the cost per month. And we don't want companies to suffer because they are being environmentally friendly and they're being progressive and they're trying to do the right thing. So really that's what we're trying to do here with this proposed plan, is find a way to kind of get that ball rolling and get some fleets on board with it to start.
Yeah, and the other question is, and I think you mentioned, that we may not be there yet in terms of, welcoming this new technology. The other concern is, do we have here locally on the Arvin Lamont 617, the infrastructure, to support, the trucks being charged, and what's the idea, if we have it where it is located, or if not, and is going to be installed, is it going to be installed in the company's property, on a public place that any other truck can come and recharge?
Yeah, so infrastructure, there is funding available for infrastructure. And whenever we talk to fleets, we help work through that process with them. So the funding for infrastructure can go both ways. It can be applied for as a public charger, where it's made available, open to the public, anybody can charge there, or somebody could apply for a private use charger that's just at their business and only their trucks use it. One of the things that we will do is, depending on what manufacturer they want to buy their truck from, the big manufacturers are also helping to support their customers with infrastructure. So they will help with the design, the engineering, making sure that they get the right equipment for their business type. And then we will also help connect the fleet with the power company to get that process started, because it is a process. The power company does need to assess their location to make sure there is enough power out there, or if they need to upgrade their transformers and such, they can get that process started. But there is, because the state of California has made it very well known that we need to go electric, the power companies are also being very proactive. They have funding available too in many cases, and it can be paired with our funding. So in some situations, the cost of the infrastructure can be mostly paid for through funding opportunities. But again, we would work closely with that fleet to connect them with the right folks so that they get the whole package that they need in order to be successful with the truck.
Follow-up question. I know that I believe it was early this year, that the city of Arvin, came with a proposal for, I think, to expand on a street, and so it was not approved. But I think part of what the city of Arvin wants to do is, in that area that they want to develop, they want to have, charging stations for cars. And will that funding, potential funding for Arvin, I know Christine wants to have that. Will that funding be competing with the trucks, or there are different parts of funding here at 617?
So, yeah, we do definitely have different pots of funding for public versus private. And then, Ryan, you might need to help me out on
Yeah,
this one.
no, I'm happy to step in and field that one. So
Yeah,
as you can, many of you remember, we went through that participatory budgeting process where CSC members helped us create the budget for your community emissions reduction program. And so through that process, you dedicated funds very specifically, dollar amounts and everything, to individual measures. So without coming in and talking to the community, we wouldn't shift any of that funding. So the money that is dedicated to heavy duty trucks is only for heavy duty trucks. Money for charging infrastructure is only for charging infrastructure. So that wouldn't change unless, if we saw a lot of demand in one program and we're not seeing demand in another, what we may do is later on come back to the community and say, hey, here's the situation we're seeing. Do you want to do anything? Like, do you want to like shift some funding to like take advantage of the demand over here, or do you want to continue to leave it in this program and do more work to try to spend that fund? That would be the process that we would take. But outside of that, what's committed in the community emission reduction program is the funding for that, and it's not going to be shifted to anything else. Like I said, unless we brought it back to you.
Yeah, because I think at the same time, talking with residents, after Christine brought, the idea of expanding the street, we were talking with residents, I think the residents in Arvin didn't like the idea to spend that money there, they want to use it somewhere else, but definitely, the conversations were that, for the charging stations, they will be supportive, and moving forward, I don't know how it will look like, but, I think, we say no once to one of the Arvin's project, and I think we need to say yes to other projects that they will bring,
Yeah.
On that topic, I don't think it was a hard no. I think it was more the community, rightfully so, was asking questions, and they wanted more information to feel, have a better understanding of how that project was going to benefit the community. And I know that's what Christine was working really hard to, kind of going back and, evaluating that project and, bringing back that information that the community was looking for. And so, when she comes back, hopefully in the next few months to share that information, that the community will feel, better about moving forward with those projects.
And I see a question from Bianca as well.
Yes.
Go ahead, Bianca.
After speaking to a couple owner operators about this electric, sorry, I need to run away from my there was concern about the power of these vehicles or big rigs, and how there's no charging stations in public places, where a lot of these truck drivers have to reset their time. In case of there's not any traction on this program, can the CSC go back and refund this project somewhere else if there's no traction? Like Gustavo was mentioning about the locomotives, there was no traction. Can it also be refunded to another project that is useful for the community? Another question that I do have is, I know that in the area, there's also little trucks that transport the grapes. And right now I'm talking about it because the season is right now.
Yeah.
Usually they're diesel operated. I don't know if there's any outreach to these small tractors that transport the vegetative to like the storages and things like that, because I do understand that usually they'll use small trucks or diesel operator the haulers that I'm talking about, but I was wondering if the district has done the outreach to those companies that do transport a lot in the area, especially like in the main streets. You'll see them hauling from the fields all the way to the storages where usually are in the outskirts or outside of the of the cities of like Arvin and Lamont. I know that there's some of them like Grimway, the potatoes, there's also the watermelon. So there's a lot of storages around the area of Arvin and Lamont in the radius. And these little sub haulers transport a lot of the vegetative. So I was wondering, would the district be open to finding solutions to those? Because I haven't heard anything. I just heard about the delivery trucks and things like that, but I'm also wondering these small companies that transport.
Yeah. So to your first question, Bianca, it kind of goes right in line with what Ryan was mentioning. Yes, if any of your measures fall short and are not being utilized, the community and the CSC can come back and discuss moving that money to a location or to another measure that is in higher demand. So that I think is definitely a possibility if the need should arise. For these haulers that you were talking about, I know that in many cases we have either a tractor, like a farm tractor, hauling bins of produce out of the field to the processing plant, or it's a heavy duty truck, like a big rig truck that's hauling a big load out of the field and to the processing plants.
Janine, can I stop you for 1 second?
Yes.
I'm so sorry. It sounds like we're having a technical difficulty in our Spanish channel.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt right in the middle of your sentence. If my Spanish speakers, if you could let us know if it's working. Tanya, can you hear folks in your channel? Okay, we're good.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So we do a lot of outreach and communication with the agricultural industry in general. But we absolutely could target and do some more focused outreach to the farming operations in the community specifically. This particular proposed project plan could definitely make it available to those haulers. I think that the equipment, because they're doing a very short distance just back and forth, the technology probably would be suitable for them. The only concern I've heard from the truckers that haul out of the field is that they don't want to spend a whole lot of money on a truck they're going to drive in the dirt. And I get that. So they oftentimes will buy used trucks, which are higher polluting trucks. But again, that's exactly what we're trying to get at with this measure. By providing a much higher funding level, it takes away that financial risk of theirs. And I think we would probably find some of those folks very willing to take on a truck and give it a try for, we would be proposing a 3-year commitment. They would be, again, keeping the old truck in the event that the electric truck has any issues, has downtime. We would track that information through our annual reporting process. If they were to receive funding from us, if this measure was adopted and they received funding from us, we would collect information over that 3 years as to how the new truck ran. Did it have any problems? If it did have problems, did they have to drive the diesel truck? And if so, how many miles? So we would be able to collect some very valuable information there, but also be able to correctly calculate the emission reductions that were achieved through the displacing of those diesel miles. I would like to just quickly also do a quick summary of what that project plan would look like, because I feel like we kind of are touching in and out of it on several of these questions. So we would be proposing a new purchase option. which means we would be providing up to 90% funding towards the cost of the zero emission electric truck with no requirement to crush their old truck, but a requirement to displace those miles that the diesel truck was traveling in the community with the new electric truck. So it helps to reduce the financial burden. It helps to reduce the fear and anxiety of taking on a new technology. And it helps to promote getting that new technology into the community, but also into some different vocations throughout the community in the hopes that that will then bleed out to more and more fleets as time goes on. I see we have more hands. And Bianca, I think hopefully I answered all of your questions there.
Thank you so much, Janine, for that recap. I think it's very helpful. I think Diana was next.
Okay.
Go ahead, Diana.
Sí, tengo una pregunta, a ver si entendí bien. Estaba diciendo que los camiones de cero emisión a las flotillas más grandes no les iban a pedir que intercambiaran los camiones de diésel. ¿Eso entendí bien? Y a los pequeños que son como de uno, de dos, sí les piden que cambien el camión de diésel.
So you are correct. You did understand that correctly. There is no destroying of the diesel truck. They would be allowed to keep it. And that would be for any of the eligible sized trucks, anything from a class 4 to a class 8. With the understanding that the state does have a new regulation that will eventually eliminate that diesel truck in the coming years. So the ability for the fleet to keep the truck is to help address their concerns of the new truck not working right, not having problems. We have seen some problems. We've seen situations where the computer programming didn't talk to the charging unit correctly and the truck wouldn't charge. And that takes a few days for the technicians to sort through and get fixed. But for a small company, a few days is a lot of money lost. And so we don't want them to feel like they can't get the electric truck because they're scared of the possibility of losing money and losing contracts for their people that they haul for. So yes, they would be able to keep that diesel truck through that time frame that we're under contract with them.
Otra vez nuevamente. Lo que quiero decir es por qué a los de flotas más pequeñas no les dejan también su camión de diésel, porque entiendan que son compañías pequeñas y una compañía grande, ellos pueden financiar en un futuro, ellos lo pueden hacer. Y las compañías pequeñas no, son independientes, dependen de lo poco o que les vaya saliendo conforme el día al día. Eso sí no estoy un poco de acuerdo. Y creo que también otro comentario es que para tomar esta decisión creo que vamos muy rápido. Yo pienso que tendríamos que traerlo más adelante y hablarlo con más calma, porque siento que sí sería que vamos a tomar una decisión muy rápida y no estoy todavía muy de acuerdo en que se haga eso con las flotillas más grandes. Ese era mi comentario.
Yes, and I totally understand. This is a lot of information and a lot of things to consider, and this is our first real discussion about it. So if we do need more time, that is absolutely understood and available. But to that comment, that ability to keep the old truck would apply to any sized fleet, small fleet, anybody who wants to participate, because we have heard that concern from multiple companies. But what we would be looking at is targeting businesses that are located within the community. And And sometimes that might be a larger fleet, sometimes it may not. Hopefully we are able to target more of the small businesses, the small fleets, and help them move that to that transition. But absolutely, if the community and the CSC decides that we need further conversations, we can absolutely do that and look at future dates for conversations. I think there's a hand up with Mario.
Yeah, my question is that why you guys don't make it like you know, for the public to see all these vehicles, you know, like go to Arvin or Lamont and show them off. Maybe people would get interested on them.
Yeah,
Not
you
just
know,
only
it's-
companies, but the public.
yeah. There definitely have been big events. They tend, unfortunately, to be in the bigger cities, but we could definitely reach out to some of the dealerships in the area and see if they can set up a demonstration. Usually what happens with the big brands like Peterbilt, Kenworth, Volvo, is the company will provide a handful of demonstration trucks and then they pass them around to the dealerships.
Okay.
So we just have to find out when the dealership that's near Arvin Lamont would have that demo truck and request that they do like a show and tell in the Arvin Lamont community. But we could definitely reach out and see if that's something that we could help arrange.
Yeah, because a lot of family-owned business do not know about this, what's going on, because I talked to a couple and they didn't even know nothing about it. And I think that's why we need to give out more information.
Yeah.
Because a lot of family-owned farmers do not got that information.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, definitely. We can definitely work on that. Bianca.
Sorry, I just wanted to have a couple follow-up questions. So, so my partner is also a truck driver. He does haul out of state, but when he does local runs, they're really bad quality paid. When these technologies come out, like the electrifying things like that, you give all the resources, but from the transition to the point where an owner operator transitions to a new, maybe cleaner, efficient, there's a time frame where the applicant, I remember when I spoke to Ryan about it, he said it takes about a whole year to process the vehicle to bring it in. In that circumstance, is the district gonna help out the driver with kind of the resources to adjust to the new vehicle? Because I know that there's the technologies are different and the driver might need training on it. Would you guys also provide that, or it has to be done by the company? And if so, how much of the pocket from the driver does it, if it is running through the driver, how much is it going to be part of the driver's budget to come?
So I don't know if I have a really great answer for you, but I can say that the big companies, again, Peterbilt, Kenworth, Volvo, the ones that have been players in the trucking industry for a long time, have some great support. They've got corporate reps, they've got folks that will come out and help train the drivers, that will help the companies with, you know, information that they need for maintenance and for repair needs. They've got traveling technicians that will come out. So I can't speak to some of the newer companies like Nikola, Tesla, Workhorse. These companies I'm not as familiar with, so I would imagine they will also, again, it's a competitive industry, will have those types of resources. So what we would recommend for a smaller fleet or an owner operator is that when they are shopping around, that they do ask their dealership those questions. What support services do you have? Can I get training for my driver? You know, I have not heard of any of those costing extra. But then again, I have not gone to try to buy a truck. So what I've heard from presentations and such that I've been at, given by those companies, is that they are there to help. They want you to buy the truck, and they will do what they need to make you feel comfortable, to get you up to speed and educated, and have the resources you need to be successful with that truck.
I have another following question. I know that you were mentioning about Tesla being one of the new manufacturers for the big rigs.
Mhm.
Are they going to be like the drivers? Are they going to be able to access their charging station from Tesla to charge their big rigs? And if so, has the district done the outreach to Tesla to see what are their programs, or how? My question is, has the district done their homework in researching all these kind of questions from different companies that are electrifying the big rigs or electrifying delivery trucks? What kind of programs do they offer? Do they offer charging stations, things like that, that can be accessible for drivers when they have to charge their vehicle?
Yeah. So we have worked with several of the companies that have representative dealerships here in the Valley. Tesla does not have trucks available for purchase, and they're not going to for some time, undisclosed amount of time. We don't know. So we have not had those more specific conversations with Tesla yet, only because they're not ready to even have trucks available to order. But the companies that do, I'm going to say Peterbilt, for example, because I was recently at a Peterbilt dealership for a ride and drive. And this one happened up in the northern region. And the Peterbilt representatives were there, and they had so many resources available to fleets, including help with the charging infrastructure. I've seen the same level of commitment from Volvo. And Freightliner, I haven't been to any events directly with Freightliner, but we do have some fleets in the Valley who have purchased electric Freightliners. So we will be connecting with them periodically to see how the process is going, see what their feedback is, how much they enjoyed the process or didn't enjoy the process. So we're really trying to work that from both sides, get information from the manufacturers, but also from fleets that have taken on the equipment, because that's a little bit different aspect of information is from the fleet owner itself as opposed to the manufacturer. So we are trying to get those conversations continued going from both sides, the fleet side as well as the manufacturer side.
Thank you so much, Janine, for that very comprehensive update on this proposed plan. You've provided several answers to many of the questions that the committee has. At this time, want to see if there's more questions that folks have. It sounds that could be answered right now. Sounds like the community is asking for more time to process all of this information that came in tonight before they can move to a consensus and a vote. I want to make sure that we're hearing that correctly, or if there's things that need to be asked right now before we transition to our next agenda item.
And Dr. Ramos, I did see a few questions in the comments. So once we move on, I'll go ahead and jump into the comment to the chat and help try to answer those questions as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Janine. Well, Janine, I think the floor is yours with the comments. I don't see anyone else with a hand raised at this time.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate everybody's time and I think we'll be having some more conversations about trucks. So I'll go ahead and I'm not sure who's next up on the agenda, but I'll jump into the chat and answer those questions while the next person takes on a presentation. Thank you so much for your time, everybody.
Thank you so much, Janine. We look forward to that. And if there's more clarifying questions, we are happy to read them aloud as well. And I see that Brian has also jumped in there and provided some answers. So we will transition to our next agenda item, which is enforcement overview. We had originally allocated about 40 minutes for this agenda item. Looking at the clock, it looks like we have about 40 minutes left. So hoping that we can potentially squeeze in the discussion in less than 40 minutes so that we can provide you all with some updates and some standing next steps. So in response to the action item that was added as a request from a CSC member at our last meeting, the Air District is going to provide us with an enforcement overview. So these requests were to learn more about enforcement processes. And so today we get to hear directly from the Air District on how they best enforce inspections, violations, and public complaints. I see that Dylan and Grisela are here tonight. So the floor is yours. You should have the privileges to share your screen if you need to. If you have any technical difficulties, please do let me know.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, she said, my name is Dylan Bourne. This is Cristela Avos. We are the area inspectors assigned to Arvin and Lamont. So it is only right that we are the ones to present on how we do enforcement with compliance. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and share the presentation.
Looks good, Dylan.
Thank you. Let me just get the notes up here real quick, and then we're ready to go. Oh, we lost it. Okay. Okay. All right. So we're going to have Cristela start with an overview and a background of how the compliance department, and we're going to try to go a little fast so we have time for questions at the end. So that being said, Cristela.
Good evening, everyone. Hi, everyone.
It looks like you have an echo. So if you guys are in the same room, if only one of you can unmute at the same time.
Yeah, we're good. Thank you. Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Dylan. So let's start with some background. The Clean Air Act Amendment of 1970 instructed the United States Environmental Protection Agency to establish health-based ambient air quality standards on a national level. California legislature also established ambient air quality standards, and this can be stricter than the national standards. These standards are identifying various pollutants that have been proven scientifically to cause adverse health effects. Criteria pollutants include ozone, carbon monoxide, and oxides of oxygens, among others. Regulatory programs are put into place to limit and reduce emissions of these criteria pollutants to meet the standards set by the state and federal government. When it comes to oil and gas operations, the oil contains VOCs that react to produce ozone. Being that ozone is a criteria pollutant, we regulate and inspect these operations to reduce and limit emissions of these precursors. So the district's role in regulating and inspecting stationary sources of air pollution. The district adopts, implements, and enforces local rules and regulations, issues permits and registrations for equipments and operations that are subject to the district rules and regulations. We conduct routine inspections of stationary sources, respond to and investigate public complaints, take enforcement action when non-compliance is found, and ensure violations promptly return to compliance. These rules and regulations have been developed and implemented by the district in order to reduce or limit air pollution. As inspectors, we do not only assess facilities for the rules listed here. While conducting our inspections, we also assess for other rules that may be applicable. For example, we look for unpermitted equipment or visible dust emissions. In order to best serve the communities chosen as a result of AB 617, enhanced inspection measurements were implemented as a result of the SERP. These enhanced measurements ensure sources of pollution are often surveyed and remain in compliance with all applicable regulations. The district implements these measurements by conducting more frequent inspections at stationary sources and conducting more surveys for heavy vehicle diesel idling and construction sites. Now we'll discuss stationary sources of air pollution. Oil operations can vary in their complexity. At its simplest, you can have a well and a couple of tanks like shown in picture on the left, or you can have thousands of wells with various tanks and equipment, as you can see on the right image. In a larger operation, you can have numerous tank batteries. The batteries can have separator systems that separate the oil, gas, and water, or flares that dispose of excess gas, as you can see at the bottom image. Oil production operations in the Arvin Lamont area most resembles the image on your upper left corner. They're what we refer to as small oil producers with a simple setup. They typically consist of a well and a tank battery. In addition to regulating oil and gas operation, the district has regulatory rules in place for other stationary sources operations, such as but not limited to coating operations, internal combustion engines, dairies, and construction sites.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and finish off here. I know that was a lot of information at one time. Feel free to write down questions and ask at the end if you want us to break any of that down. Otherwise, we are your area inspector, so we're available anytime throughout the week to help process some of this information. So we're going to continue on here with the breakdown of how we do our actual compliance inspections. But first, I'd like to talk about a couple control devices. This one first here is a flare, most commonly found in oil and gas sectors, specifically for refineries. Flares are used in one of two ways. They're used as a control device to make sure that excess gas can be burned in a safe and clean manner, or they are used in emergency events. So if a facility has a process upset or some sort of emergency that would justify the release of gas, rather than that gas being emitted straight into the community or local areas, it is sent to a flaring device. That way that flare can process the gas in a safer manner without releasing tons of excess emissions into the atmosphere. These flares are heavily regulated by the district. They require mostly at refineries, SIMS units, and we're going to go further in on that, as well as they have flow regulations and fall under our Rule 43, excuse me, 4311. So continue on, we'd like to talk about operator inspection. So what we expect oil and gas companies to do in order to prevent emissions. So one of those is the operator leak detection and repair. So many of our oil and gas rules require the operator to actually conduct annual or quarterly inspections to make sure that their equipment is leak-free. And in these rules, we have our repair times. So if they do find leaks that exceed the emission standards provided in our rules, they would have to repair it within a certain time frame. Otherwise, they'd be subject to violation. We also have a tank preventative inspection and maintenance program. This program would allow tank operators to degas their tanks and clean in an appropriate manner. But in doing so, they're also subject to higher repair and leak standards. So they're required to actually conduct leak inspections on their tanks if they're in this program. We also have emission monitoring. Certain equipment such as steam generators, heaters, boilers, cogen, and like power plants, they're required to have continuous emission monitoring systems, otherwise known as SIMs. So this device takes real-time readings of emissions and actually sends it to the district so we can have information of any excesses occurring in real time. So for example, if you have a flare or a sim, they may be required, or a cogen, they may be required to be on this sim system. And therefore, if a exceedance event occurred, we would know about it immediately and could take matters in a fast way. So moving forward, we also have source testing requirements. So source testing requirements mean if you have similar equipment like the steam generators, heaters, boilers, you would be required to have a third-party contractor come out and test the emissions generated from these fired equipment to verify that they fall under the district regulation that is subject to. These testing requirements, depending on the type of equipment and the rule, could be annual, every 2 years, every 3 years. It depends on compliance and what type of equipment it is. And lastly, we have sampling. Certain facilities are required to take samples, for example, H2S or sulfur, and gases that may be burned, such as at flares. They're required to take sulfur samples or H2S samples in order to make sure that the gas that it is being flared is clean. So that's another way that we can have these oil and gas operators take measurements to make sure that do not exceed emissions standards that we set. So moving forward, we have 2 ways that the community can get involved in these readings and understanding air emissions, and that's our air monitoring program. So we have at the district a community monitor that is set up in multiple locations in Arvin and Lamont, and these are available at any time at valleyair.org and give you real-time data of the actual emissions that are being generated in your area. Alternatively, refineries are actually required as well to have fence line monitoring. So it's the same setup. They have air monitors on the fence line of their property that take real-time data and allow public access to it. So if they have an event or high readings, you as part of the public can have access to these, so you can hold them accountable and hold us accountable if need be. You can access Kern's fence line monitoring at kern4460.com. 4460 is the rule that actually requires them to have the fence line monitoring. So if you want to find more information about that, you can search that rule. So let's get down to how the district actually conducts inspections. So generally the district, we conduct inspections on a regular basis, but in Arvin, Lamont, these inspections can be more frequent, such often as a 6-month cycle or as needed. When inspecting oil operations, we have a lot of questions that we ask in order to determine compliance. So the pieces of equipment that we find out there, we are always trying to verify that it falls under our district standards and rules and make sure that it is permitted equipment if it needs to have a permit. So we ask a multitude of questions and inquire on these to make sure that they are following our rules and standards. A way we determine if any of these facilities fall into our rules, whether that be local, state, or federal rules, is we ask these type of questions such as the gravity of the oil, the TVP of the tank, similar lines along those, in order to verify that they do fall in these rules, and if they do, that they're taking appropriate measures to conduct these inspections that are required of them. In addition to asking facility questions about their operations, we also conduct research into the operations. We review previous inspections to see what the last inspector had to say in order to follow up on if there was any issues prior. And we also check other agencies' databases in case we need to find pieces of equipment. So for example, we can look into CalGEM's equipment, and that will, their website, and that will show us locations of all the wells and tank settings in the area. While we're doing these inspections, we utilize a variety of tools. So one of the tools we use is hydrocarbon analyzers, such as the TVA or the Eagle 2. This allows us to quantify any leaks that we find. So as we're doing our inspections, we will check leak points throughout the oil and gas facility to verify that there are no emissions being generated that are fugitive from their any of their equipment that is subject to the applicable rules. We also use the portable exhaust gas analyzer. So this is how we determine compliance for the fired equipment that we talked about earlier. So not only are the oil and gas facilities and other sources, they're required to do source testing on this equipment, we also verify that the equipment is meeting our emission standards using the testo. This allows us to get a brief view of what emissions are being generated by it and to see if further action is needed. We have our own precision testing here with the source test van that we can also utilize as well. We utilize continuous emission monitoring systems, so the SIMS, as we talked about earlier, source testing, and we also have visible emissions evaluations. So these are for exhaust generated equipment that may be not inefficient, and we'll use visible emission evaluations or our optical gas imagery to verify that it is within the limits. Okay, so moving on, as you can see here, this is a couple of our inspectors conducting inspections on oil and gas facilities. The inspector on the left is screening a site with a OGI camera, and we're going to show you a couple examples of what that looks like here in a second. And the inspector on the right is doing a fugitive emission survey on a well, verifying that there are no emissions being generated from this well. Let me see if I can get this video going. This is what we see when we use, I don't know if I'm sharing the right screen.
You're sharing the entire PowerPoint. There you go.
Yeah, we don't have it set to automatically play. Yeah, well, this presentation is available to you on the website. So if you guys want to look at that, since we are short from time, we'll skip the technical difficulties, but this is a piece of equipment that we use in order to verify leaks. It's very efficient, and it shows us basically a cloud of gas that would not be visible to the naked eye, but it shows us on the camera that we can see it. So on the left is a well. From the wellhead, we can see gas coming out, and on the right is a tank where a lot of the chimes seem to be loose, and we had a lot of excess gas. The result of these actually both ended up in compliance measures being taken. On the well, notice of violation was issued, and it was repaired within the 2 days. And on the right, unfortunately, we weren't able to actually get a quantitative reading of the leak, but we did have the oil and gas operator still repair the leak, and we verified on a later date with the OGI camera that it was leak-free. So both of these actually result in the emissions being repaired. So verify compliance with permit conditions. So as we stated, the operator is going to be in violation of Rule 4455 if our inspections demonstrate a leak in conditions section 5.1.4. So this basically is just stating that if we conduct our inspection and we find a leak greater than 50,000 ppm or multiple leaks that fall in the minor leak category, we will issue a notice of violation, and they will have to repair all leaks found by the district within the certain time frame. All that information can be found in Rule 4455. That is our refinery rule. It applies to natural gas refining processes or chemical plants. The rules also applicable for Arvin and Lamont would be 4409, 4401, 4623, 4624. So all of our oil and gas rules, but this is kind of an example of what they'll see in their permits. They'll see that if we go and we find a leak, that they'll be subject to a violation. Here is just an example of when we use the exhaust gas analyzer, the testo. So an example here of a condition they'll see in their permit is that the emission rate shall not exceed 25 ppm of NOx or 400 ppm of CO. And we can test that using our exhaust gas analyzer on any equipment that is fired and has those permit conditions. Okay, that being said, I'm going to pass it back over to Christella, who's going to tell you what happens when enforcement action is taken, as well as how you can follow up with complaints.
Thank you, Dylan. When is enforcement action taken? When we note something in the community that is not compliant with the applicable rules, and during the course of our inspection, we will issue notice of violations. Some of these examples include exceeding of emission rate standards, failure to repair VOC leaks, illegal burning in barrels, late testing, failure to test and or monitor, failure to maintain records, and unpermitted equipment. Now let's talk about complaints. The district receives thousands of complaints each year. We prioritize in responding to complaints and investigating non-compliant sources. If a complaint comes in after hours, an automatic bilingual complaint hotline directs the complaint to the on-call inspector available 24/7. Complaints can be filed via telephone, online, or through our app. Once a complaint is received, the district staff contacts the reporting party to gather additional information. Multilingual translation services are provided in the field and over the phone. During normal working hours, GPS tracking system helps identify the nearest field staff for ongoing complaints taking precedence over other activities. Here are the sources where we could file complaints 24/7, 365 days a year. It could be online through our website, through the Valley app, or by calling the toll-free number 1-800-926-5550. The type of complaints that can be reported are potential air quality violations, odors, illegal burning, burning in barrels, smoking chimney or outdoor wood burning devices on restricted burning days, usually between November and February, and dust or track out from construction sites.
Okay, we covered a lot of stuff in a short amount of time. So we'll open it up for questions right now. I'm gonna stop sharing my screen so we can look at those. If you don't have questions right now and have questions later, you can reach me at dylan.bourne@valyair.org or call me here at the Air District, and we can answer any questions that you might have. But if you have questions right now, I'd be happy to take them. Looks like we have one. Gustavo.
I think my question is, one day I made a report and I took pictures. It was on a refinery, and it's the flares. It was like more than normal. And I called your office, and I was told that I mentioned, that I took pictures, several pictures, when it was happening. And I was told that, it was okay, but that you don't use pictures, as kind of evidence. What's the reason for not, accepting pictures as evidence?
We appreciate pictures, absolutely. Any pictures are great. Oh, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I'll handle that question.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, so yeah, we definitely want pictures, videos that people have. The reason why it was shared with you, Gustavo, that we can't use it. It would be as like the evidence for issuing a notice of violation. Like it absolutely supports. But that's why it's so important that I'm sure you did this when you came across it. It's so important to notify us as soon as you're seeing it, because then we can have staff get out there right away. So that way we can confirm that. Also, take evidence down to document that. And it has to do with ensuring that, if a case were to go to court, that's the information that we need to support that. So we would use it as supporting documentation, but we can't use it as like the sole piece of potentially taking enforcement action.
Yeah, I think you may want to, have your staff be more clear, because the way I understood it, these are, great that you took pictures, but are not useful. And I was reporting, at the same time, the flare was up, and that was in the refinery near Lamont. And I called, and I was passing by when, it started, increasing the flares, and I took picture, very impressive picture, like as evidence. But when I called, I was told that, those would not help. And I think the way you explain it, moving forward, those may help. I think that's better, but I was told that, the way I understood, is that it doesn't matter if I take pictures or not.
No, it definitely does help. And a lot of times, for example, it's an illegal burn or something like that. It helps us track down where that burn is. And so then, we're able to go out to that location where you saw it, because sometimes it may have burnt down. Maybe the picture was taken the night before, and we're getting out there early the next morning. And so having that documentation to help us is very, very important. And so we definitely want people to share that information. And when it comes to stationary sources like a flare or something like that, we also look at data from the facility. And so that may also support that there was an issue that was either potentially a violation or a potential breakdown situation. And so all that information is very helpful in us conducting those investigations.
Thank you so much for clarifying that, Ryan. Dylan and Cristela, looks we have another question from Cesar.
Yes, hi. I know that one of the issues with making these kinds of reports is that, and one of the issues that we have had, especially at the refinery here in Lamont, is that when reports are made, by the time an inspector comes out, the event is no longer happening. And that has been the difference between like the notice of violation being able to be issued and it not being issued. Is there any requirement from the operator to film, record visible emission or use an OGI camera? Because I know that the operators are called and alerted by the air district and could do what's necessary to stop some emissions to happen by the time the inspector gets there. But is there anything that makes sure that they also begin recording evidence, because they could change their operations before an inspector gets there, especially knowing that they get, a heads up before an inspector is sent out. So how can we make sure that, if that is the difference between a notice of violation or not, how can we make sure that operators who have access to, these very expensive OGI cameras and have people on site who are trained for visible emissions evaluations, how can we get them to do that, and film it so that we can also see the opacity or Ringelmann level of the smoke that's coming out? Because I feel like that is a hole in how these are enforced, and something can be done on behalf of the accountability of the operators to make sure that there's evidence in between when something is reported and when an inspector goes out there.
Yeah, one of the, thank you for sharing that, Cesar. The visible emissions is just one of the things that we look at when we investigate, flare usage. And so, there are strict requirements on when a flare can and can't be used, how much gas can be sent to the flare. The standard for this equipment, pretty much across the board, the state requirement is that they can't have visible emissions greater than 20% opacity for more than 3 minutes. And so when they first start up, there's definitely visible smoke, and usually that flare is only used in the majority of cases, flares are used for safety devices to prevent gas from going directly into the atmosphere. Not speaking to any one particular flare, but just in general terms. And so when they first start up, there is generally some level of smoke, and once it heats up and gets to the point then that smoke usually goes away. But that's just one of the pieces that we look at when we investigate that. We also look at, okay, what caused it? If it's an emergency device, was it an emergency? What were the circumstances? And so, yeah, we dive deep into that. In regards to contacting the facility, the reason why we want to do that is, if there is something that's going on that shouldn't be happening, we want them to take care of it as quickly as possible. We definitely don't want to wait to, with the idea that we're going to catch them through an opacity violation. Like if it takes us 20 minutes to get out there, to us, it's more important for the facility to be aware of the issue and take care of it to stop the smoke from happening. So it's not an attempt to avoid a violation from happening. It's more about avoiding additional pollutants from getting in the atmosphere. I mean, that's always going to be our main focus and our priority. So that's kind of when we do reach out to them, that's the reason for it.
Yeah, and I definitely appreciate the priority for safety on your side. Is just on the operator side that I question their commitment for public safety. And just a real quick follow-up question on why the limit is 50,000 parts per million.
So we have different levels of leaks. And so that was one of the things that we talked about at the subcommittee, was that we substantially lowered the threshold for what is considered a leak. And so the like major leak is at the 50,000 threshold, but where people have to make repairs is established at a much lower level. And so that was one of the changes in response to AB 617 and us going back and reevaluating the rules and hearing the concerns from community members about oil and gas sources, that you know, our board took action, amended our rules to substantially reduce and lower that rate at which operators have to make repairs to leaking components. Bianca, I see you got your hand up.
I had a couple follow-up questions to what you were mentioning about the threshold being substantially lower. Is it also the state's standard? Is it far beyond what the state standard is for a leakage or for a leak that does happen in the refinery? And you were mentioning that you let the refinery know or any of the violators know. In that circumstances, would the air district still do a violation if there's a potential leak that was happening or a flare happening at the moment? Would the air district still do the violation for the offender? And do you target the violations via just like a penalty, or is there a fine? And if there's a fine, are they substantially great where they won't repeat the offense? And if not, how do you base that violation fee to these
Yeah,
offenders that contaminate the air?
Yeah, great questions, Bianca. Kind of going to your first question about, will we take enforcement action if we, through our investigations, we find violations? And the answer to that is absolutely, we always do. If we find non-compliance with our rules and regulations, we take enforcement action. And usually that's in the form of what's called a notice of violation. And notices of violation carry monetary penalties. And so when we assess penalties, we have to take into account different factors that are set forth in the California Health and Safety Code. So that we have to abide by the state requirements when it comes to assessing penalties and violations. And so there are lots of different factors that we have to take into account that cause penalties to escalate. And so, some of the things that we would take into consideration would be if there's a prior history of a violation happening, the size of the operation itself. It goes to their ability to provide resources to comply with district rules and regulations. And so, the bigger the company, the more ability that they have to hire people to ensure compliance. And so that also has to be taken into account. How much pollution is being generated from the violation, if there is, if it's an emissions violation versus if it's a procedural violation. Procedural violation, for example, is if they're required to maintain a certain record and they don't maintain it, they don't have the log sheets, that would be what we can consider a procedural violation. So the penalties for emissions violations are substantially more than a procedural violation. So all those things we have to take into account to establish penalties, because the penalties need to act as a deterrent to prevent the activities from continuing to happen. That's why the penalties can continue to escalate. And there's other things that we have to take into account too. So, if it's a situation where we know for a fact that someone knows about our rules and regulations. We tell them they have to do something or that they can't do something. For example, we tell an operator that you can't put in a automotive coating operation in a certain place, and that they need a district permit in order to do it, and they need to have compliant coatings and do those types of things. And they turn around and they create a business without doing all those things. There's escalators for that. That's considered willful and intentional, especially when we can establish that there's an intent on their part for us not to know about it and not comply with the rules and requirements. So it's very involved, it's very complex, but yes, Bianca, the penalties are intended to prevent violations from happening. Yeah, Bianca.
Do those violations go back to the community, maybe in SERP money or just redirect all these fundings? I know my violations are not that great for industry, and it's horrific to see that these violators just get a slap in the hand. I know that they should be measured because of the state standards and things like that, but at the same time, it doesn't affect their pocket as they should, because a violation is a violation. When you get a ticket while you're driving, it's a high violation. It hurts your pocket. For these industries, it's not a big deal. But my question is, does it go back to the communities? Because these are communities that are holding the burden of these health impacts and air quality that is affecting them. That's why we have the 617 in the area, because of the poor air quality that we have in the area. So my question is the air district refunding all these violations back to the community? And if so, can we have clear detail of where does it go to?
Yeah, and I know this has come up in chapter as well, Bianca, and it's the same situation here that it is there. So one of the things that penalty funds come back to the district and it goes in the general fund, but it goes in the general fund to provide money for the district to be able to enforce our rules and regulations. So when you're talking about benefits to the community, those monies allow us to have inspectors out in the field doing inspections. It provides money to establish air monitoring in the communities. It allows us to have an outreach and communications department that goes out to the communities, does events, explains our rules and regulation. It provides incentive funds, for different programs the district runs. So it absolutely, the penalty monies do come back to the communities.
But it's in the general fund for the district. We're talking about 617 communities that are in burden already. These are communities that the state classified them as a bad air quality in the area. What my question is, if not being redirected back to the communities, why is the air district not doing that? If this is a community that's already holding the backburn of these industry, like the refineries that have been repeated offenders to the point that they have to monitor the air quality in the area because of the offenses that they've done in the past. So my question is the district considering that? Because that is concerning for public health, especially because there's also a school nearby. There's a community like Hilltop. Sorry, my kid is screaming in the background. But there's community out there. There's people living in the area, and instead of incentivizing the community of seeing these changes or even reporting the polluters that are affecting the area. So that's just my question that I have and my concern.
Yeah. Well, and that was one of the reasons why the district supported Arvin Lamont being selected for AB 617. And I mean, when you're talking about funds coming to an area, I mean, through the CERT development process, that's why almost $30 million of funding was dedicated to this area. And so in conjunction with the other things that I described that we're doing, there's, you know, a lot of money coming to the area to you know, work to resolve and make the situation better.
I think we're looking back to, well, I'm looking at the air district and seeing what else you guys could do, because when we were looking at some of the violations that the refiner has done, it's a repeated offense, and it's ridiculous that they continue doing that and the air district is not doing something outside what is your area of expertise. Sorry.
Bianca, this is Amy. Thank you so much for your comments. I'm looking at the clock and I don't mean to cut you off at all, but it sounds like this is a topic that you all would like to continue to talk about. And I'm wondering if this is something that we can bring back to a future meeting as a potential follow-up to enforcement. And so that we can have more ample time to discuss these things. I'm hearing a lot of answers from the air district, a lot of clarification and follow-up. So it sounds like maybe that is one action item to include, in addition to also hearing the need to bring back more space to continue having CERF updates at our next meeting. So with that said, I want to take a moment to thank Dylan and Cristela for joining us tonight. We really appreciate you coming tonight and providing a comprehensive update on enforcement. I know this particular CSC has been asking a lot of questions about enforcement, and you all, I know you went over a lot of information really quickly. Do appreciate you being able to cover so much information. If it's all right with you, we'd love to invite you to come back. I think when the CSC has their agenda setting meeting, there might be a request to have you back with more content and more information, given that this was such a popular topic. And thank you so much, Janine, for your comments as well and your presentation. It sounds like we'll definitely be talking about heavy duty trucks. Follow-up questions at our next meeting. I'm looking at the time, we're a minute over. So that means that we will be pivoting to having our standing updates be sent to you via email. So do please expect to have a follow-up email likely coming from the air district that will have some updates regarding the air monitors in the Arvin Lamont area. And there's also updates on some of the district's outreach. So you heard Heather provide some of those updates earlier. And we also have some other agency updates, meaning updates from CARB and DRP, Department of Pesticide Regulation, that you will see via email. With that said, I want to just share my screen one last time to show you. Can you all see my screen there? Thank you. That our next agenda setting meeting is scheduled for September 7th at 4 o'clock via Zoom. So if you're interested in contributing to this discussion and really talking about some of these agenda items that need to come back for the next meeting, please do plan to attend. In addition to that, there will be another pesticide subcommittee meeting. Appreciate DPR being there and having all of you present to provide a very rich discussion, which will be held on September 26th. That also will be via Zoom. And our next actual CSC meeting is scheduled for September 27th at 5 o'clock via Zoom. With that said, I know we did hear from some folks in some of the other agenda items, but want to make sure that we do provide space for any general comments from the public or from the CSC. If you have other questions that you want to ask at this time, now is your time. I'm also checking the YouTube live feed to see if we have any questions, and I'm not seeing any questions on our live stream feed. Also not seeing any hands raised. or any additional comments? So I think that concludes our meeting for tonight. Really appreciate you all being here, being open to learning new things from all of our presenters today, asking critical questions, and being engaged in the conversation. Thank you so much. Have a good evening, and we will see you at the next agenda.